Hello, everybody. Welcome into Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Today is the first day of March Madness. Brackets are officially busted already. I hope that you weren't knocked out in the first couple games, but there have been about 5 results. There are a couple games live right now. We are going to start off the show going over some of the results that have already happened, as well as breaking down Friday's games, some of the big ones that I'm interested in, and picking a couple of those. We're then going to transition into some baseball with the insane story that is Shohei Ohtani and his translator, and everything that has to go into that. We're going to talk about that in our third segment, and we're going to finish off our show in the NFL, talking a little bit about the pro day situation, whether or not they really matter for some of these top prospects, as well as the conversation surrounding some of the pro days. But before we get into it, remember that if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Again, that link is gsmcpodcast.net. Leave a tip or donation with a message. It'll pop up on the bottom of the screen. It'll be there for you, me, and everyone else to see. We appreciate anything that you do give. Once again, that link to leave a tip or donation is gsmcpodcast.net. But like I was saying, we're going to start off with the live March Madness. Right now, if you are paying attention, March Madness is going on. It is fully underway. It's my favorite time of years for sports. You can have 3 different screens on with 3 different games. The first round of the tournament is chaos. And we've had a couple good games. We're going to just go in order. I want to start with the first game of the day, Michigan State versus Mississippi State, where we saw Michigan State take down Mississippi State, score 69-51. It really wasn't that close. Michigan State held the lead throughout, and Mississippi State just could not shoot the ball. They shot 37% from the field, 22% from 3. But the main thing that stuck out to me for this game, and for a lot of other games, is the amount of free throws were really down. I know this was what ended up being an 18-point game, but total amount of free throws in this game, there were only 16. Mississippi State took 10, made 5 of them, and Michigan State took 6 and also made 5 of them. Really, the main difference in this game was shooting. We just went through the numbers. When you shoot 37% in a game, and when you shoot 22% from 3, especially for a team like Mississippi State that relies so heavily on the 3 ball, and when you struggle to get rebounds, they were out-rebounded by a pretty heavy clip, especially on the defensive end. You're not going to win the game against Michigan State, a team with lots of experience. So they move on. They will be playing North Carolina, who just won their first round matchup. We'll get to them in a little bit. But I was very impressed by Michigan State. I was really low on them heading into the tournament. They were not a team that I was super excited about. I've seen them perform a couple times this season, and they just didn't really stand out to me in anything. Their defense wasn't particularly special, but their rebounding today really impressed me, honestly. They were, even when they were missing shots, they shot 50% from the field, but Mississippi State wasn't able to bring in those rebounds. If you look at the numbers, it's not that big of a disparity, but if you're watching that game live, every single big rebound that would have shifted momentum for Mississippi State, every time that Mississippi State started going on a run, something that would have brought them in just a little bit, they were unable to bring a board in, and Michigan State got some second chance points. So they kept pulling away. That's my big takeaway from this one. The second game of the day, BYU taking on Duquesne. Duquesne, first real upset of the tournament. Duquesne wins 71-67 in a game that I know definitely hurt a lot of brackets. It hurt mine personally. I had BYU going to the Sweet 16. Duquesne looked really solid. They led for almost the entire game. Their defense was what really impressed me, especially their interior defense. They had 7 blocks on the game. I believe one of their guys had 3 blocks. He was very impressive. Here we go. Yeah. Dixon. They're not even their center. Dixon. He had 3 blocks. He was a monster on the inside. He kept turning away BYU at the rim. I remember a play from the beginning of the game, near the middle of the game, right before halftime. BYU was down by 2. They looked like they had a wide open layup, and I believe it was Dixon, comes from behind, blocks a wide open shot that the BYU guy just kind of lazily floats up there, and it really swings momentum. BYU had a lot of opportunities to stay in this game and run away. Like, they were in it down the stretch for almost the entire game. They started off 0 for 8 from the field shooting. So that's they fell back early, but they were able to claw back in. They took the lead a couple times, but it really wasn't anything too sustained. They might have had a 2-point lead, I believe, maximum, but they never really were able to pull away. Duquesne looked really solid. Like I said, their defense was the main thing that stuck out to me. Those 7 blocks on the inside, they didn't turn the ball over that much. And in March, turnovers are a huge thing. You saw it kill Mississippi State. They couldn't shoot, and they turned the ball over a whole bunch. Excuse me. But very impressed by Duquesne. 11 seed moves on. We have our first real upset of the tournament. The rest of the tournament so far has been pretty chalk. You can call Michigan State an upset over Mississippi State, but those 8-9 matchups, they're not really upsets. They're kind of the same. So maybe the Dukes can make a little bit of a run. Duquesne Dukes. Depending on who they play next in their bracket, it's either going to be Illinois or Morehead State. Those teams are locked in battle right now. Last I looked, Illinois had the lead by just a little bit. Morehead State started out up 9-0 in that game, though. So we'll take a look at that game in a little bit as well. The next game, Akron versus Creighton. And at the beginning, I thought Akron was going to pull away. Creighton won this game 77-60. It wasn't that close down the stretch. Creighton is just the better team. 3 seed playing the 14 seed. They just pulled away. Akron started off very strong. Akron is a team that a lot of people were underestimating, and I think if they got a better draw, not Creighton, still if they stayed on that 14 seed line, played a team like Illinois, or if they had played a team like Baylor even, I think they could have given them a game. Akron, very good defensively, very good from 3. They just drew a tough match taking on Creighton, who is very, very good at basketball. Creighton is a team that is full of tall, versatile athletes. I mean, they made a near Final Four run last season, and they kept a lot of the same team. Creighton is very good. They are a team that could make a very deep run, but they were able to claw back in this game. Like I said, the underdogs have been starting off good early, and it's really the way that these games have going has been based on how these more higher, not experienced, higher expectation teams respond. Because every single game has kind of started in the way of those lower seeds. So the Blue Jays are a very good team. That's the best way to tell. If a team can claw back from a little bit of a deficit and win the game, stay in it, stay positive, claw ahead, not look back, never give up. And that's why Creighton was able to stay in it. They're a very, very good team. So they could make noise deep in the bracket. Couple games left that have gone final, 2 more, that being Arizona taking on Long Beach State. Long Beach State, who had the situation with their coach being fired but told, hey, finish out coaching this season. They then went on a miraculous run to win their conference tournament and make the NCAA March Madness tournament. They drew Arizona, and for the most of the first half, they were tied. I believe heading into halftime, it was like 35-35. But Arizona is just a better team. They pulled ahead. Their offense could not be matched. They ended up winning by 20 points, 85-65. Long Beach State was a great story, but they did have when you're a 15 seed, it's never going to be easy. Long Beach State just didn't quite have the talent to match up with a team like Arizona. And Arizona is really good when they're on, but they're inconsistent. They're super duper inconsistent. And when they get a couple rounds in, again, they're in a very weird region where the top teams are really inconsistent. North Carolina is inconsistent at times. Baylor is inconsistent at times. Those are the top 3 seed. All of those guys are inconsistent, and they have some solid mid-major teams, or not lower-rated teams. Michigan State inconsistent, but a 9 seed. New Mexico could make some noise. They're a little bit lower rated, but they're not inconsistent. And then St. Mary's is in there again. Not super talented, not the most up there. They're a 5 seed for a reason. They're a good team, but they're consistent, and that's why they're a 5 seed. They're good and they're consistent, but they don't have the highs that Arizona or UNC have. So there's a lot of this. That is a very versatile region. Something to keep an eye on there. And the final game that's gone final so far is North Carolina Wagner, our first 1/16 matchup. Wagner loses by 28 points, 90-62. Wagner, who in the first 4 game won their first ever NCAA tournament game. This was their first ever NCAA tournament experience. So congratulations on them for making it to the tourney. They played a tough opponent. It's never easy going up against a 1 seed. Carolina is no exception. They are inconsistent, but they're a very good team. North Carolina is taking on Michigan State in that second round. That's the first one that we have set up so far. No other matchups have been confirmed, although there are 2 going on right now that would finish up second round matchups. The live games right now, Morehead State versus Illinois, like we talked about. Illinois has built a 16-point lead after starting early down. Again, this is what we talked about. These lower seeds are able to get a strong start, and then the higher seeds have been able to come back. And Illinois looks like, again, there's still 7.5 minutes of game time there, but the score right now is 54-73. So it's almost a 20-point game there. Illinois is really pulling away. Morehead State doesn't seem like they're going to have the juice to come back. So that means in the second round, Illinois would be taking on Duquesne. Illinois-Duquesne is going to be an interesting matchup. We'll break that down in a future episode when it is when it is official there. 2 other games that are going on right now. A tight one in the South region. A tight one at halftime between Oregon and South Carolina in the Midwest region. Oregon, the 11 seed, is up by 5 on South Carolina. Maybe we see a second 11 seed upset. Again, like I said, it's been pretty chalky so far today. Oregon, even though they were a lower seed, has been projected to win by a lot of people, sports books, and everything like that. So it wouldn't be that huge of an upset if they did end up winning. But they are currently up by 5 at the half, 34-29. And the last game that is live right now is going to be Nevada taking on Dayton. Nevada, the 10 seed, Dayton, the 7 seed. Dayton is up by 7 right now with 5 minutes to go in the first half. That's a fun game to watch. That one, 2 high-flying offenses. Both can shoot the ball really well. Both are also pretty solid on defense. So they're very similar teams. It's just whoever plays their ball better. That game is going to be fun to watch down the stretch. And those should be all the games that tip off while we're live. The next game that tips off is at 6:50. So that will be about 50 minutes after our show. So keep an eye out on those games. I will continue to give you updates as time continues. But in our next segment, we're actually going to look ahead to Friday's matchups, take a look at some of the bigger games that will be happening tomorrow, pick a couple of them. Maybe we'll go through and pick all of them, give some previews. But yeah, thank you everybody so much for tuning in. We'll be right back on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown. Get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the news it fits. I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift. Oh. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
Welcome back, everybody. If you are just tuning in, we just finished breaking down all the games that have happened and are currently live on the first day of March Madness. I hope your brackets aren't too busted already. In this segment, we are going to go over Friday's games, take a look at them, pick out some of the more intriguing ones to me, break it down a little bit, see who I have picked, as well as some interesting tidbits about those teams. But before we get into it, remember that if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net, leave a tip or donation. Appreciate everything that you do give. If you leave a message with that tip or donation, it'll pop up on the bottom of the screen. We'll have a discussion about what you had to say. Once again, that link is gsmcpodcast.net. But let's get right into it. March Madness Friday preview, that is what we will be talking about here in this second segment. And what better way to start off than the first game of the day between the Northwestern Wildcats and the FAU Owls. The Florida Atlantic, who made a wild Final Four run last season, is back in the tournament with basically the same team. They're a much higher rank this time. They're the 8 seed, taking on the 9 seed Northwestern. What I have in this game, I have Northwestern taking it. The field goal, the shooting on FAU has gone down. The defense really has been the biggest difference. Last season, they were an elite defense in the league. This year, they are in the 200s as far as defensive efficiency goes. They aren't quite the same team. They turn the ball over 11 times a game, and in the tournament, turnovers are vital. Those extra possessions, especially when you're playing elite opponents every single game, you can't turn the ball over and expect to win. If Northwestern can play their game and not turn the ball over like they've been doing, I expect them to win this game. Northwestern shoots at about 40% from 3, which is almost 5 points higher, almost 4 points higher than FAU does. Again, a lot of this, when I'm looking at March, is defense and shooting. So having a team that kind of fell off a cliff as far as their defense goes, and this isn't to say that they're bad, it's because they have the offense to keep up with their defense. It's just when they're playing an elite team that can score and shoot the 3 at a really high clip like Northwestern can, FAU might be in a little bit of trouble. And even if they do make it through this, playing UConn in the second round, I don't have a good feeling about either of these teams. Second game of the day, or the second one that I found interesting, at least, UAB taking on San Diego State. And this is a lot closer than a lot of people think. Both of these teams play a very similar style of basketball. They both shoot it about the same from the field and from 3. So they both, their stats, if you look at them board for board, are almost identical. Almost every single major counting stat, they are within 1 of each other. Rebounds, assists, steals, points, shooting, free throw shooting, 3-point shooting, everything. They are just right next to each other. They both turn the ball over 11 times a game. This is going to be a very, very, very tight game. Like I said, these two teams are very close, identical. I just think at this point, when you have teams that are so close to each other, as far as stats go and trends go, you have to go with the more talented team. And San Diego State has played a harder schedule. They've been a little bit more consistent than UAB has. It's why they're a 5 seed and UAB is a 12 seed. So I'm taking San Diego State in this game, but it is very close. UAB and San Diego State match up super well with each other. There's some games that match up well against each other because they're polar opposites, and there's some teams that match up well against each other because they're the exact same. And these two are like the exact same team. So that's going to be a really fun game to watch at 1:45 tomorrow. Uh, San Diego State is my pick, but it's going to be real tight there. I wouldn't be surprised if UAB pulled that out. You need a couple 12-5 upsets in there as well. Um, Baylor at Colgate. Colgate's been in the tournament for quite some for the last couple years. They were a darling because of their 3-point shooting a couple years ago as a 14 seed that lost in the first round. I don't believe they've won a game. Um, they're not quite the same team that they were when they were that everybody's sleeper pick. Baylor's a very, very good team. They shoot the ball well. They don't turn the ball over that much. Uh, you know, it's I got Baylor in this one. I don't think this one's going to be very close. I know Colgate has some tournament pedigree, but so does Baylor. They won a national championship just a couple years ago, and they've been in the dance almost every single year since. So I'm taking Baylor here against Colgate as well. Next game of the day, not another one that I don't think will be too close. Marquette, who's a juggernaut of a team. You look at all those fancy Ken Pom and offensive and defensive rankings when they're doing the stats saying, oh, only these teams have ever won a national championship. Marquette is a finalist in almost every single one of those. Marquette is an elite team in this tournament. They have the shooting, they have the coaching, they have the experience. They've made a couple deep runs in the last couple seasons. Western Kentucky just does not quite match up. Maybe you look at them on paper and you say, hey, these guys might have a shot. They out-rebound them on defense. Rebounds are super important, but when you're making shots, it doesn't matter. A team like Marquette is going to win. They pass the ball so well, 15 assists a game. They turn you over. They have almost 9 steals a game. It's just not going to be that close. Marquette should kill Western Kentucky. And, anything can happen. It's March Madness. It's never a good idea to come out here and be so confident about anything. Because from my experience talking about college basketball, talking about March Madness specifically, if you're confident about something, you're wrong. So take everything I'm saying with a grain of salt. But I don't think this game will be very close. Marquette is just one of those teams that is an elite title contender this year's tournament. The first game that I think might be close and one that's really interesting, New Mexico versus Clemson. We talked about New Mexico a lot as a sneaky Cinderella team. The Lobos are in that West region that we said was so volatile. You have a bunch of inconsistent teams at the top, and a couple solid mid-major teams in St. Mary's and New Mexico. New Mexico, who I've seen some people legitimately have in their Final Four. 11 seed in the Final Four is not unheard of. We've had it happen a couple times. UCLA made that run out of the first four a couple years ago into the Final Four with their team. So it's not unheard of. It definitely isn't. And if there is a team that's going to do it, you have to be in that region. That's the region that's going to be insane. That's the one I expect to have the most craziness happen in it. This tournament always has a lot of chalk, but there's always one crazy one. And if I had to put my money on one double-digit team to make the deepest run, it would be the Lobos of New Mexico, just because they have probably... It's not an easy path, don't get me wrong. It's never an easy path, but the 11 seed is probably one of the easier paths. The 11 or the 6 seed are probably the easier paths to get through a conference, because you don't have to play that one side. You don't have to play that one seed. When you are that 11 seed, you go play the 6, then the 3, and then the 2, instead of playing the if you're the 12 seed, you play the 5, then the 4, and then the 1. So it's a little bit of an easier road if you're on that bottom half of the bracket. You don't have to face, if we go by chalk, presumably that 1 seed until the Elite 8. So it makes it a little bit easier to make that run if you are 6, 11, 3, 14, or 7, 10. But yeah, I think the Lobos could make a bit of a run, and I know a lot of people are saying that, but they're the mid-major team I expect to go the deepest in this tournament. Uh, Auburn is getting a lot of Final Four love, actually. I was talking to a whole bunch of people in my sports broadcasting class today, and they did a bracket, and I was shocked to see how many people picked Auburn to win the whole thing. Auburn is very, very good. I've heard a lot of comparisons to the team that made the Final Four in 2019, and they have very good shooting. That team was propelled by shooting. Um, I know, just like that year, they made the SEC championship and won it, but they have a tough path. You know, getting through Yale, I think they can do it. Yale's a solid team, but they just had a tough draw with Auburn. Where Auburn sometimes runs into trouble is when they go cold, and they can go cold. Especially if they're playing a more physical team. We saw them lose to App State earlier this season. App State, who sneaky good team. I know they didn't make the tournament, but App State is a very, very good team in their own right. They had an elite defense. They just didn't have the offense to propel them to the tourney. But Auburn did lose to them. So when they run into a tough defense like in App State and their outside shots aren't falling, it's not going to go well for them. So there's a recipe for success against Auburn, but if their shots are falling, they're hard to beat. And you know you could say that about just about any team, but Auburn is a contender. They are a team that people say could beat UConn. UConn, who is the odds-on favorite to win the whole tournament. So I expect them to beat Yale. Last couple games I want to go over here for Friday. James Madison at Wisconsin on Friday is very interesting, and I'm gonna try to be as unbiased as possible. I'm a James Madison student. These two teams are polar opposites playing against each other. James Madison shoots it really well and plays really good perimeter defense, but they're not very physical on the inside. If you can get them roughed up and they get them out of their game, they are going to start shot chucking, and that's when they get into trouble. If they're comfortable, they move the ball around well, and they got a lot of open shots. That's why they average 16 assists a game. They're very good at passing the ball, very good at forcing turnovers. Wisconsin, on the other end, they don't quite have that physical ability, but they like to play slow. James Madison is a faster team. They play a little bit faster than Wisconsin does, who likes to slow down the pace. Who in this game should be determined by whoever's pace it's played at. If the Badgers are badgered in to playing that fast pace that the JMU Dukes like to play, I don't expect them to win this game. But if JMU has to slow down for Wisconsin and Wisconsin is able to control the pace of play, JMU is not a particularly efficient team. They're very good on offense because they force a lot of turnovers and they get a lot of shots up. You know, they get a bunch of offensive rebounds. They average about 12 offensive rebounds a game. They get a lot of second chance points, and they get a lot of shots. They're not super efficient. You know, they do shoot 48% from the field, but if you watch them, they miss a lot of shots. But they also they get a lot of chances, which is why they have the 9th most points per game in the entire country. So this game is going to be decided on pace. That's a game I'm very excited to watch, not just because I'm a fan, but I think that's going to be a good game. And then the last one I wanted to talk about is St. Mary's taking on Grand Canyon. The Lopes taking on the Gales. St. Mary's, again, in that in that West region, anything can happen. The Lopes, GCU, started off super hot. You know, they had the most wins or the fewest losses for a long time. They'd won their tournament, got in. These 12 seeds this year are no joke. I'd be very careful as a 5 seed. That being said, I do have St. Mary's. I love St. Mary's this year in their bracket. I think they match up very well against a lot of teams in the West. I expect them to make a deep run, but nothing is sure in that West region. When we come back, we are going to go over or transition away from March Madness. We are going to move into some baseball. There's a crazy story developing right now between Shohei Ohtani, the Dodgers, and his translator, now former translator, who was fired, and illegal gambling. So we're going to break all of that down. It is an insane story. Stick around. We'll be right back.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube. Absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
Welcome back, everybody. Thank you so much for sticking with me through that break. If you are just tuning in, we just finished our live March Madness coverage. We went over Friday's games and took a look at the games that are going on right now. Just a quick update before we get into this segment. Oregon has pulled away 7 minutes into the second half. They are now up by 17 on South Carolina. Nevada has taken the lead over Dayton 34-25 at halftime, and Illinois just won against Morehead State 85-69. But like I was saying, we are going to be talking about baseball now. Shohei Ohtani, star of baseball, stud, has gotten himself into a scandal that I haven't really heard be too publicized because it's a little complicated. Initially, it was reported, we'll get into all that in just a second. But before we do, remember that if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Again, that link is gsmcpodcast.net. Leave a tip or donation with a message. It'll pop up on the bottom of the screen there. We'll have a little discussion about what you had to say for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. We appreciate anything that you do give. Once again, that link is gsmcpodcast.net. But like I was saying, we are going to talk about Shohei Ohtani in this segment. It's an insane story. I don't know what you guys have heard about this, so I'm going to just take it from the beginning, and then we'll do a little bit of a breakdown of what I think and what should happen in this situation. So, for those who aren't aware, Shohei Ohtani, probably the best baseball player in the world right now, just signed a fresh $700 million deal. He is Japanese, so he has a translator with him who translates. Obviously, that's his job. He speaks Japanese. Shohei Ohtani speaks a little bit of English, but having a guy that speaks Japanese is a little comforting. You know, you can speak your home language with someone, and he can speak better English than Shohei Ohtani can. So he's been his translator for however long he's been in the MLB for. I think it's been like 6 years at this point. His name is Ippei. Ippei on Tuesday was fired, and it was alleged that he took $4.5 million from Shohei Ohtani to help pay off illegal gambling debts. So he was fired, kind of unceremoniously. It seemed like it was all wrapped up then. This was on Tuesday. Yesterday, story developed a little bit more. They are in South Korea. They are playing in the Seoul series, and it comes out that the wire transfer is in Shohei Ohtani's name. He transfers millions of dollars directly to an illegal sports book. And now there's a bit of controversy. Shohei Ohtani hasn't said anything. His former translator has already basically admitted to everything. He said, yeah, I did it. So maybe they're in on this together. But it's still kind of swept under the rug a little bit. This report, and then the gambler, or the person that runs the illegal sports book that the money was sent to is been saying that Ohtani bets with him right from his mouth as a kind of marketing thing, saying, "Oh, you guys can trust me. Shohei Ohtani, the greatest baseball player in the world, he bets with me." So is Shohei Ohtani betting? And gambling has a weird connotation has a super bad connotation in sports. Baseball especially, where it has a long history. You think of a guy like Pete Rose, who is practically barred from the Hall of Fame. He's banned from baseball because of a gambling scandal, as well as a couple other things. But he's banned from baseball because he was gambling on games. Pete Rose, who is up there for all-time leader in hits in a career. He had a certified Hall of Fame career. There's a reason that if you talk to any baseball fan and say the name Pete Rose, they're going to know who you're talking about. He was really good at baseball, but he is barred from baseball. He is not in the Hall of Fame. He's never getting in. He is banned from the MLB because of gambling. So the MLB has a long history with gambling. Some of their best players have been involved with it and faced severe punishment. But now you have a situation with Shohei Ohtani, who is the face of your league. He just signs a $700 million deal. I can't stress that enough. $700 million deal is crazy. But that's besides the point. He signs a $700 million deal this offseason with the Dodgers, and not even a couple months later, in the first or second game of the season as the Dodgers, the allegation comes up. And his translator kind of takes the fall. And it's up to you. Again, not all the evidence is out there. They're still doing informal investigation into it. But Shohei Ohtani has not really been able to has kind of gotten away scot-free on this. And a lot of people are saying, why are you letting him go? And it would kind of fit the MO of the Major League Baseball regime under Rob Manfred. Rob Manfred, who is the current commissioner of baseball. Rob Manfred, who has not done a very good job, to say it nicely. He has not been a very good commissioner. There's been a lot going on there. He dealt with a lot of scandals in not the best way. He kind of just did a slap on the wrist for the Astros. He went hard on a lot of players for a lot of other things. People do not like Rob Manfred for the way he runs baseball. He is stepping down at the end of his contract, thankfully. But the way that I'm looking at this situation, and there's still evidence to be found. Evidence is still coming out in this, but right now it doesn't look good for Shohei. Right now it looks like Shohei has a gambling problem, which you can't have in sports. Like, I understand here in the media nowadays, and I've talked about this a little bit, but I'm not going to get too into it. The media and everything has fallen in love with sports gambling. It's getting legalized everywhere, and I understand that. It's fun if you do it in if you're controlled with it. But if you have a gambling addiction and you're playing in it, especially sports gambling, when you are a star player in the game, it's not acceptable. And there's a reason that punishments are so harsh. There's a reason Pete Rose is banned forever from baseball, because you can't fix games. It ruins the integrity of your sport. And if your sport has no integrity, especially a sport if your sport has no integrity, it's going to lose what makes it a sport. This isn't to say anything about wrestling, but wrestling, everyone knows it's fake. But if you could, and you can gamble on wrestling still, but we know it's fake. Imagine if the CEO, I know the CEO stepped down or got replaced, but imagine if Roman Reigns, who is gambling on wrestling, he knows what's going to happen. He can control what's going to happen 100%. So it's a weird situation where you can't have you need to have integrity in your game, and gambling and integrity do not mix. Those are polar opposites, especially if it's a chance game like sports is, or a skill game. So this is a very serious issue. Keep an eye on this because the story is still developing. But right now, from a perspective of everything that I've gathered so far, it looks like Shohei Ohtani might have a little bit of a sports gambling issue, and I don't know what he was gambling on. It doesn't say. We have at least it hasn't been reported yet what exactly he was gambling on. But if he was gambling on baseball, something needs to be done. I expect Rob Manfred to do nothing, unfortunately. Like, there shouldn't be exceptions for star athletes, for stars, for big names, but the face of the league of baseball being caught up in something as serious as an illegal gambling scandal, gambling on baseball too. If he really was doing that, which again, there's nothing out there that I've seen that shows what he was gambling on. But if he was gambling on baseball, you need to punish him. It needs to come, and it needs to be a severe punishment. You cannot show mercy on him because he's Shohei Ohtani. This can take down an entire sport. Absolutely, it can. Yeah, this kind of allegation, this kind of, if there's really this much proof and it gets validated, it can take down the entire MLB. The MLB is not in a spot where it can survive just saying, we'll figure it out. It's just gambling. It can take down the whole sport. They need to act, and they need to act right. They need to investigate this, and they need to see if he actually did it. And if he did, I expect, or I hope, that Rob Manfred does the right thing and punishes him severely. It doesn't need to be a lifetime ban like Pete Rose, but it should be at least a season. You know, we saw what happened to Calvin Ridley. He was betting on his own team, but it was a deterrent. You know, gambling is not something to be messed around with. I applaud the NFL for handling it like that. I know some people might think it's too harsh, but you can't have that stuff in your game. That could be harmful. That is harmful. The MLB needs to act if it's proven that he's doing this. They need to act, and they need to act with no remorse. I love Shohei Ohtani. I wish him success. I hope that he doesn't have this problem. I really do. I hope that it was just his translator and he gave him money for it. But there's still stuff coming out about it. So keep an eye out on that story. It's very crucial, honestly, for the future of baseball. There's a lot of things that are crucial for the future of baseball, but that one is absolutely one of them. Keep an eye out on that. In our next segment, we are going to transition into the NFL, talk about the draft a little more with it just about a month away now. Pro days happened. Caleb Williams had his pro day. Marvin Harrison Jr. did not participate in a pro day, and there's been a lot of discussion on both sides about those two players, different things. So we're gonna talk about that a little bit, along with some risers and fallers after free agency and some interesting things that might have changed in the draft. But yeah, you've been listening to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. We'll be right back.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
Welcome back, everybody. If you are just tuning in, we have talked about March Madness, both today's and tomorrow's games. We just finished talking about Shohei Ohtani and the scandal he is caught up in with his now former translator, and what might come back to him. Real quick before we get into our next segment, updates on March Madness. 2 games are going on right now. Oregon is up 62-48 with 10 minutes to go in that game. It is still halftime between Nevada and Dayton. Nevada leads 34-25. Those are the 2 games that are going on. The next game starts at 6:50 between Colorado State and Texas. But like I was saying, in this segment we are going to transition out of baseball, out of March Madness. We are going to talk about football. The pre-draft process is underway. We are continuing to cover it. Pro days. Caleb Williams' pro day happened yesterday. We're going to talk about the big stories coming out of that, as well as if pro days really even matter for some of these big prospects. But before we do, Remember that if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Leave a tip or donation. We appreciate anything that you do give. If you leave a message, it'll pop up on the bottom of the screen. We'll have a little discussion about what you have to say. Again, that link is gsmcpodcast.net. We appreciate anything you give. But let's get into our final segment. Pro Days. Pro Days are private workouts for single schools, and they're important for these smaller prospects that don't get to go and that aren't invited to the combine. But there has been a trend nowadays of more and more players, big players, projected first-round picks, projected top 5, top 10 picks, not participating in the combine for injuries, and that's completely understandable. Pro Days are generally where they show out. You get a more personalized experience as opposed to having one weekend to talk to 300 kids. You get a more personalized experience with scouts that are there for you, specifically you, and a group of, 10, 15, 20 people instead of 300. So you get a more personalized experience, and it's a positive thing. Pro Days are great. Whatever I'm about to say is not to disparage Pro Days. Pro Days are a great idea. They're very important. We love Pro Days. What I am going to say is there has been players that don't participate in Pro Days. Caleb Williams just did his Pro Day. It went very well. He, at the end, tossed up like a 70-yard pass. But it wasn't for him. He's going number 1 overall. That's been locked in for almost an entire season. He's going to the Bears. Keenan Allen was there. He knows he's going to the Bears. Keenan Allen knows he's going to the Bears. They had a little discussion. He said, Keenan Allen, you're getting 115 catches for 1,300 yards and 12 touchdowns. If that's the case, pick him up in fantasy. But Caleb Williams showed out at his Pro Day. We all knew he would. Pro Days aren't serious. He's throwing the ball in shorts. We know what he's done on tape. It's not for him. Pro Days, when you're a big athlete like that, are for your teammates. Because, like I said, it's just your team, your friends. Brendan Rice, son of Jerry Rice, is a player there at USC, and his stock definitely rose during that Pro Day. He had a very, very good Pro Day. You go with a quarterback that that you're comfortable with, and that takes some time. That's why sometimes receivers at the combine or quarterbacks at the combine struggle a little bit, because they're playing with players that they've never played with before. They don't know how fast they are. They don't know how they run their route specifically. Everyone runs it a little bit different. And you want to be your best, so you want to be comfortable with the guy that's throwing you the ball. It's the same reason why players get to pick their pitcher in the home run derby, But Pro Days are very important. And Marvin Harrison Jr. decided not to do the Pro Day. It took a lot of eyes away from Ohio State. And that's a criticism that I've heard from a lot of people about, hey, Marvin Harrison, you're going to go top 5. You're going 4 at the absolute latest. You don't need to do this, but what about your teammates? Don't you want them to get drafted? Don't you want them to raise their stock? Eyes are only a good thing, That's a criticism I've heard of Marvin Harrison Jr. Marvin Harrison Jr., who has kind of flown under the radar for not doing a lot of things, much like Caleb Williams. Caleb Williams did not participate in a lot of stuff at the combine. He didn't do medical. He didn't do interviews. Neither did Marvin Harrison Jr. Marvin Harrison Jr. did a lot of the same things that Caleb Williams did, but he wasn't getting that same criticism. And I know it's a little bit different because he's a wide receiver. Caleb Williams is a quarterback. Caleb Williams is going number 1 overall. Marvin Harrison is going in the top 5. And it's just because of their position. There's probably some other stuff outside of that. I know a lot of people didn't like that Caleb Williams painted his nails or got dressed up for that photo shoot. And that might have a little bit to do with it as well. That doesn't matter for football. That shouldn't change your judgment, I think, at least, if you're judging them for their football player abilities. But it happens, on and off the field, people get judged for different things. So we take a look at these different pro days and how they might affect teams, players specifically. These star players, like I said, they're not going to get that affected by their pro day, but it is their teammates. These smaller colleges, pro days are a big deal. I know James Madison had their pro day a couple days ago. They had a couple scouts out. These guys aren't going super high. You might get a Jalen Green, who led the nation in stacks for a while, only playing like 8 games. He did have a massive injury. I expect him to get drafted in the later rounds. He's very good. But there's some other guys there that had their pro days, got a chance to work out in front of scouts, might go undrafted. So there's a lot of things that pro days can do. Really, just get your name out there, do some networking. This is not always for the draft. It might be for after the draft. Give these guys a shot. So pro days are a good thing. I want that to be the takeaway from this segment. We love pro days. Pro days are great. But if you're a star, you should still participate. And I think it's a bad look for Marvin Harrison Jr. that he didn't. Because I know it shows that he's not really thinking about his teammates as much. And I know that's just a kind of thing that follows wide receivers, that they're divas. I don't think he's a diva. I just think he wasn't thinking about his teammates. He was just like, I don't need to do this. I don't want to. And that's fine. Do your own thing. He's going to be really successful. He's probably the most likely player in this entire draft to be a Hall of Famer, Marvin Harrison Jr. He's a very special talent. He's probably the best player on this big board, but on my big board, he's probably number 1 prospect. Caleb Williams, number 2. So there's a lot of things with this. Draft is coming up. I'm going to do a post-free agency mock draft probably tomorrow, if not on Monday. So keep an eye out for that. We'll go over all that in just a little bit. March Madness over the weekend. We'll talk about all that tomorrow. Thank you, everybody, so much for tuning in to today's episode of Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I've been your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Watch March Madness. Come back tomorrow. We'll break it all down, as well as second-round matchups for over the weekend. Hope you guys have a great rest of your day. I'll see you tomorrow. Same time, same place. Bye-bye.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet.